disons quelques paroles en français pour vous expliquer que la majorité de la conversation aura lieu en anglais, mais nous apprécions beaucoup la présence du Premier ministre et il peut parler naturellement en français. Nous avons une traduction de ses commentaires, de ses remarques, et je souhaite la bienvenue à tout le monde. Welcome, everyone. I've just said in French that we welcome the Prime Minister from Burkina Faso, as well as his members of his team, and explaining that he will be speaking in French, but the majority of our conversation will be in English. And if there's any problems, speak up and we'll sort them out. This is a product of the technologies that we have to use for these calls, and we understand that it causes some more than just inconvenience. That we wish we were in a position to do more in terms of translation. I'd like to just go over, before introducing everyone, a few housekeeping notes. First of all, just to remind you that my name is Bob Ray. I'm the ambassador and PR from Canada and the chairman of the Peace Building Commission. I've had this job, I think, for 6 weeks, which means I'm now a veteran, and this is my my third meeting of the commission. So I'm delighted to see all of you and to have such strong participation from everyone. We will be recording this meeting and posting the video on the website for interested observers. That's the PBSO website. I'd like to remind everyone to sign in with your name and the mission affiliation, and to keep your microphones on mute if you're not speaking. That's quite important because of the problems of feedback and background noise and so on. Once the briefers have concluded their presentations, we're going to open the floor to member states. I declare the speakers list now open. In fact, I gather that some of you have already indicated your desire to speak. And I would ask all missions to use the chat function to request the floor. As per the usual practice, we'll build the speakers list on the basis of protocol and requests, giving preference to the countries of the region. Would like to just remind you that your remarks should be limited, if you're a briefer, to 5 minutes. And if you're speaking as a member state, really try to keep it down to 3 if that's possible. I know it's challenging, but we have a lot of people usually who want to get their comments on the record, and we'd very much appreciate it if you could do that. Just by way of background, we had our last meeting in early March, which was our last in-person meeting, and there we heard a presentation by the government on their prevention and their peace-building priority actions, including in the areas of security, the rule of law, services, local governance, resilience, and social cohesion. The minutes are all available, and I found them very helpful as background to this conversation. We then invited members of the commission, as well as the relevant and financial and technical partners of Burkina Faso, to share information about existing or forthcoming commitments. And we found that people were very quick to confirm, and we saw that the information to date reflects a contribution of over 400 million in support of the implementation of the priority actions. We would like for the PBC to continue to serve as a platform that helps to mobilize political support and financial resources in support of the development and peace-building priorities of Burkina Faso. But as we all know, shortly after our meeting, Burkina Faso recorded its first cases of COVID-19, has now recorded over 2,000 since March. Of course, we know that everywhere. In fact, we've had a couple of very strong meetings on this question of what has been the impact of COVID on the security, humanitarian, and development challenges in Burkina Faso, particularly for the populations that are living in areas under the threat of terrorist activity and for those that are internally displaced. The purpose of today's meeting is to receive an update on the ongoing peace-building activities, the impact of COVID-19, the government's response, and the post-COVID-19 recovery plan. We're particularly interested in hearing briefers' views on the gender dimensions of this crisis. We hope this meeting will help sustain international attention and mobilize additional support in response to the pandemic at a time when Burkina Faso is preparing for general elections in November. dear colleagues, excellencies, we have several distinguished briefers who can help shed light on the impacts of the pandemic on peacekeeping developments. First of all, we will be hearing from His Excellency Christophe Joseph Marie Dabiré, who's the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso. He's joined by two colleagues who I'm going to introduce, although they're not going to be making separate comments. Pauline Zouret, Minister Delegate to the Minister of Economy, Finance and Development, and Mr. Florent Bacouan, who's the Permanent Secretary of the National Council for Emergency Relief and Rehabilitation in the Ministry of Women, National Solidarity, Family and Humanitarian Action. Following the Prime Minister, we'll be hearing from Ms. Agnès Badeau, who's Présidente de l'Union Nationale des Femmes Opératrices Économiques. And then we're going to hear from Ms. Giovanni Biha, who's here, the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General for West Africa and the Sahel. And finally, and far from least, we'll be hearing from Mr. Oscar Fernandez Taranco, who we all know who's the SG for Peacebuilding Support. So I'd like to ask the briefers to be as concise as possible in their remarks. We will be delighted to circulate full statements to the membership at the conclusion of the meeting. And so once again, if you want to get on the speakers list, please let us know through the chat group. Et maintenant, c'est mon plaisir de présenter le Premier ministre de Burkina Faso, Monsieur Christophe Joseph Marie Dabiré. Monsieur le Premier ministre, vous avez le temps, vous êtes bienvenu chez nous et nous attendons recevoir les nouvelles de votre pays. Merci beaucoup. Vous êtes là? Le Premier ministre est là?
Monsieur le Président, vous me recevez?
Oui, on vous
Bonsoir,
entend.
Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président,
Je vous écoute, je vous entends. Allez-y.
bien. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président de la Commission de consolidation de la paix, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres de la Commission, Mesdames et Messieurs, je voudrais vous remercier pour l'organisation de cette réunion et vous réitérer la gratitude du peuple burkinabé pour votre soutien ainsi que votre accompagnement dans les divers chantiers de développement du Burkina Faso. Je tiens en particulier à vous exprimer ma reconnaissance pour l'attention spéciale dont fait l'objet mon pays depuis qu'il est confronté au péril terroriste et au désastre de la maladie à coronavirus. En demandant l'organisation de cette réunion, le gouvernement voudrait attirer à nouveau l'attention de la communauté internationale sur le cas spécifique du Burkina Faso déjà fragilisé et obtenir d'elle un soutien supplémentaire en réponse à la pandémie de la COVID-19 à un moment où mon pays se prépare à organiser des élections couplées, présidentielles et législatives le 22 novembre 2020. La tenue d'élections apaisées et transparentes, nous en sommes convaincus, constitue un gage de l'approfondissement de la culture démocratique, de la cohésion sociale et de la consolidation de la paix. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs, comme vous le savez, depuis avril 2015, le Burkina Faso fait face à des attaques de nature terroriste. Ces attaques se sont progressivement étendues à plusieurs localités au point de menacer l'intégrité territoriale et la cohésion nationale. En vue de relever les défis sécuritaires, le gouvernement a adopté 2 programmes majeurs de consolidation et de prévention de la paix pour la période 2017-2020, que sont le programme d'urgence pour le Sahel Burkina Faso et le programme d'appui au développement des économies locales. Ces 2 programmes visent d'une part à traiter les défis sécuritaires en agissant sur les capacités de défense et de sécurisation du territoire. D'autre part, il s'agit d'agir efficacement sur les causes profondes de cette situation en créant des bases de la résilience par l'émergence d'économies locales compétitives et par la mise en place des infrastructures socio-économiques de base. L'ambition de mon gouvernement est de réduire durablement la pauvreté et les inégalités inter- et intra-régionales. Malgré les efforts consentis par notre peuple pour contenir le phénomène, la situation sécuritaire reste préoccupante dans certaines localités. C'est dans ce contexte que le Burkina Faso a obtenu des Nations Unies un soutien à l'élaboration de la matrice d'action prioritaire du programme d'urgence pour le Sahel. Nous avons eu l'occasion de la présenter à la Commission lors de la réunion du 5 mars 2020. Il y figure les activités les plus urgentes de prévention et de consolidation de la paix dans les régions touchées par l'instabilité. À cela s'ajoutent les domaines de la sécurité, de l'état de droit, de la gestion des urgences humanitaires et sociales, de la gouvernance locale, de la résilience et de la cohésion sociale. Sur le plan humanitaire, la situation est marquée essentiellement par des mouvements massifs de population dus à l'insécurité. Il en découle la dégradation croissante des ressources naturelles, la rareté des terres cultivables, les impacts du changement climatique et de la pandémie du Covid-19, aggravant notre situation de vulnérabilité. Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs, le Burkina Faso, à l'instar des autres pays du monde, est également confronté à la pandémie de la Covid-19 depuis le 9 mars 2020. Ainsi, notre pays, à la date du 5 octobre 2020, totalise plus de 2000 cas confirmés, dont malheureusement 59 décès et plus de 600 cas actifs. Cette évolution de la pandémie, qui est assez moyenne en comparaison de la situation de la sous-région et dans le monde, indique une tendance à la maîtrise. La pandémie a engendré un impact négatif au plan social et économique sur les populations en général, déjà fragilisées par les chocs divers. À titre illustratif, nous avons la réduction du taux de croissance de 6,3% à 2%, la baisse des recettes publiques estimée à plus de 550 millions de dollars, soit un déficit budgétaire de 5%, le ralentissement général des activités économiques avec pour conséquence des tensions de trésorerie de l'État. Sous le leadership éclairé de son Excellence M. Roch-Marc Christian Kaboré, président du Faso, le gouvernement a élaboré un plan national de réponse à la crise de la pandémie ayant pour objet, premièrement, de minimiser les dommages économiques et sociaux de la pandémie, deuxièmement, de restaurer la croissance et maintenir la stabilité du marché, et troisièmement, enfin, de renforcer la résilience des populations pour leur permettre de vivre avec la pandémie de la COVID-19. Ce plan, d'un coût global de 480 milliards de francs CFA, soit 889 millions de dollars, définit et met en œuvre une réponse nationale holistique et pertinente. Il assure une gestion crise à laquelle le président, avec la matrice d'action prioritaire, les priorités budgétaires retenues dans le PNDS, ainsi que les défis liés au contexte économique et social actuel. Ce plan, faut-il le rappeler, a fait l'objet d'un large échange avec les différentes composantes de la nation au cours d'un forum national organisé sous l'égide du président du Faso le 22 septembre 2020. Ce forum a regroupé des notabilités coutumières et religieuses, des organisations de la société civile, des syndicats, des représentants de la classe politique et de l'administration venus de toutes les régions de notre pays. L'objectif était, dans une démarche inclusive, de remobiliser l'ensemble des Burkinabés à travers ces leaders d'opinion afin d'obtenir l'adhésion et des propositions de ces acteurs en vue de susciter une réponse communautaire dans la lutte contre la pandémie de la COVID-19. En effet, déjà fragilisé par les crises sécuritaires et humanitaires, le contexte du Burkina Faso nécessite des actions qui intègrent les droits humains, la santé, les libertés publiques et la réponse communautaire, la coopération et le développement, l'assistance humanitaire et la communication. En somme, les défis auxquels notre pays est confronté sont nombreux, tout comme pour le programme d'urgence pour le Sahel et le programme d'appui au développement des économies locales. Le Burkina Faso vient utiliser la plateforme de la communication pour solliciter de ses membres et des partenaires techniques et financiers leur soutien et leur accompagnement. Je voudrais, Monsieur le Président, réitérer ici la nécessité d'accompagner le Burkina Faso à mettre en œuvre les projets identifiés dans le cadre de la matrice d'action prioritaire du programme d'urgence pour le Sahel. Cela contribuera fortement au rétablissement d'une paix durable dans notre pays. Avant de me retirer, avec votre autorisation, Monsieur le Président, je tiens à renouveler à chacun des partenaires la reconnaissance du peuple burkinabé pour l'attention soutenue à son égard. Et je donne mandat aux membres de la délégation pour poursuivre les échanges avec vous. Je vous remercie.
Je suis certain qu'on va trouver des solutions et on va continuer d'être là pour toute la population de votre pays. We're going to now hear from Agnès Badeau, who's the presidente de l'Union nationale des femmes opératrices économiques, the chair of the National Union of Women Entrepreneurs. Madame Badeau, you have the floor. Vous êtes là, Madame Badeau? You need to unmute yourself.
Bonjour.
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 Je voudrais vous remercier, Monsieur le Président. Je suis Pauline Zouré, ministre déléguée auprès du ministre de l'Économie, des Finances et du Développement, chargée donc de l'aménagement du territoire. Et on a cru que c'était à nous que reviendrait la parole maintenant, mais on va appeler Madame Badeau. Mais si vous me permettez, je voudrais quand même faire quelques remarques à la suite de son Excellence, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Absolument, oui, oui, oui. Vous êtes, le micro est à vous. Nous sommes heureux de
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je voudrais, à la suite de son Excellence, vous remercier en tout cas pour toute la solidarité dont vous avez fait preuve pour ce qui concerne notre pays depuis donc 2016 à maintenant, où nous avons pu être éligibles donc au PBF. Et aussi, au travers, vous remercier votre équipe locale à travers donc Madame Metsi qui accompagne fortement notre gouvernement dans la réponse donc aux défis sécuritaires. Alors, étant dans le contexte donc de la pandémie, il va sans dire donc la réponse du gouvernement pour adresser les défis sécuritaires s'en retrouve en tout cas handicapée du fait donc de la difficulté de mobilisation non seulement des ressources intérieures du fait donc de la pandémie, mais aussi de la mobilisation des ressources extérieures. Et donc, je voudrais en tout cas joindre ma voix à celle de son Excellence pour réitérer cet appel à la continuité donc de votre soutien et que la plateforme donc du PBF soit donc un cadre privilégié qui puisse permettre à notre pays de pouvoir en tout cas bénéficier de la solidarité internationale pour pouvoir faire face à cette pandémie et aussi faire face aux défis sécuritaires qui entravent donc notre développement économique et social. Je voudrais aussi relever le fait que la réponse donc à travers le programme d'urgence pour le Sahel et le plan d'appui au développement de l'économie, des économies locales a été donc ajustée avec donc les besoins de l'heure et aussi avec les contraintes de l'heure, afin de pouvoir en tout cas maximiser le peu de ressources que nous avons sur les populations qui ont le plus besoin, notamment celles qui sont dans les zones de forte pression où nous abritons plus d'1 millier donc, de personnes déplacées internes avec donc, des besoins donc, humanitaires très importants. Je voudrais aussi par là saluer le PAM qui œuvre inlassablement à nos côtés et aussi pouvoir préserver en tout cas un minimum de kits de dignité à ces populations et continuer à préserver leur sécurité. Alors, donc, c'est quelques mots que je voudrais donc adresser à votre endroit et vous dire merci donc pour l'assistance continue et demander en tout cas que notre écho soit entendu. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Merci, Madame. J'apprécie beaucoup vos commentaires. On va maintenant, je vais poser la question, est-ce que Madame Bado est là? Ou
Elle est là.
Elle est là.
Elle est là. Elle est là. Madame Bado,
Okay.
vous avez la parole pour... Monsieur le Président de la Commission.
Merci, Monsieur le Président de la Commission. Le Covid a impacté dans tous les domaines économiques, notamment le domaine des femmes. Les femmes sont très présentes sur le plan économique. Bien sûr que la participation des femmes, surtout celles qui sont dans le secteur informel, n'est pas quantifiée. Il n'y a pas de statistiques, mais seulement elles apportent beaucoup à l'économie burkinabé. Pour ce qui est du secteur formel, toutes les entreprises ont été impactées, notamment le secteur de l'éducation, de la restauration, de l'agriculture, de l'artisanat aussi. Les femmes, ça a été beaucoup très impacté. Au niveau de la restauration, avec les mesures barrières, le confinement et les mesures prises, et les femmes ont connu beaucoup de difficultés sur le plan des structures qu'elles avaient pour la restauration. Pour ce qui est du commerce, les marchés ont été fermés, les femmes ne pouvaient plus accéder au marché, ce qui a entraîné des difficultés sur toute la chaîne, parce que ces femmes s'approvisionnent avec celles qui sont en milieu rural. Et comme les villes étaient en quarantaine, donc ces femmes ne pouvaient plus écouler leurs produits. Et celles qui s'approvisionnaient ne pouvaient plus s'approvisionner. Donc cela a impacté la qualité de vie des ménages, parce que les femmes apportent beaucoup dans le ménage. Et elles sont dans le petit commerce, elles évoluent, et vraiment, elles ont eu beaucoup de difficultés. Bon, au niveau de l'agriculture, bien sûr aussi, comme je vous l'ai dit, elles ont subi beaucoup de pertes parce qu'elles ne pouvaient pas écouler leurs produits. Leur site d'approvisionnement, c'est les villes, et les villes ne pouvaient plus avoir accès à ces femmes-là. Ensuite, il y a eu les femmes qui sont dans l'artisanat. Elles ne pouvaient plus travailler parce que les frontières étaient fermées. On sait que l'artisanat est beaucoup prisé par les touristes. Et comme le secteur du tourisme avait des difficultés, les gens ne pouvaient plus rentrer. Donc, ces secteurs ont connu d'énormes difficultés. Nous avons des membres aussi qui sont dans l'événementiel, l'organisation des conférences et tout. Bon, avec la fermeture des frontières, il n'y a plus de conférences. Avec le regroupement qui était limité, on ne pouvait plus faire des séminaires sur le plan national. Donc, ces entreprises aussi ont été mises à mal. Donc, ce qui fait que, en ce qui concerne les femmes, elles ont beaucoup été éprouvées par le Covid. Et nous savons, le gouvernement a essayé d'atténuer ces effets en mettant des fonds en place. Seulement, c'est les conditions d'accès. Tout le monde ne peut pas avoir accès à ces fonds. Surtout celles qui sont en milieu rural, elles n'ont pas de garantie. Elles ne peuvent pas accéder à ces fonds. Alors que c'est elles qui travaillent, c'est elles qui nous font manger dans les villes. Et qu'est-ce qu'il fallait faire alors? Moi, je pense qu'il faut organiser ces femmes. Le Covid nous interpelle tous. Il faut valoriser notre potentiel local dans tous les domaines, parce que c'est ce qui peut nous permettre de sortir nos économies de cette impasse. Et pour le faire, il va falloir que les partenaires financiers, le Burkina seul ne peut pas. nos économies sont fragilisées par le terrorisme et les fonds sont employés, les fonds sont dispersés. Aussi, les femmes voudraient que les partenaires financiers essaient d'évaluer et de voir quel est cet impact du COVID et d'apporter des soutiens financiers, de mettre en place des fonds spécifiques pour les femmes. Donc, ce que nous demandons aux partenaires, c'est de soutenir le gouvernement et que le gouvernement soutienne également le secteur privé, parce que c'est le secteur privé qui apporte beaucoup dans l'économie. Et les femmes, elles sont présentes dans tous les secteurs d'activité.
Merci, Madame. Thank you very much, Madame Badeau. I think that for the benefit of the non-French speakers, I should probably try to summarize what Madame Badeau said, because I also think it's very important. And I want to try to be as fair, but also not to go on forever. The thrust of Madame Badeau's intervention was to look at the situation affecting the private sector more broadly. Started out with, I think, some very useful reminders about the impact of COVID on the economy. It's hit remittances very hard. It's hit tourism very hard. It's hit services very hard, and therefore it's affected women and women's place in the economy very, very severely. She indicated that she wanted the international community and the financial partners to continue to support the government because of the importance of continuity, of continuing with the work that we've started and making sure it keeps going. But secondly, to insist that it's important that we look at what's going on through a gender lens that specifically deals with the condition and situation affecting women, and that it is very, very important for the financial partners to bear that in mind, as well as for the government to bear it in mind, as we look at the kinds of programs that can be made available. She talked very much about the difficulties that women entrepreneurs have in getting access to credit, and therefore it's important for financial partners to work in cooperation with the government of Burkina Faso to make sure that there are financial instruments that are accessible and available to women. So the combination of the security situation, the continuing terrorist threat, and the additional challenge of COVID-19 has created a very serious situation. But I think I would have to say that listening to Madame Badeau, I was very impressed by the positive nature with which she looked at the things that could in fact be done, as long as we make sure that we don't drop the ball, that we keep going and stay present in the conversation in the development of the country. I'm sure there are better French speakers than me and who may have corrections to my translation. I'm looking at Natalie and others, but she puts the thumbs up, so I'll take that as a good sign and appreciate it very much. Now we're going to turn to Giovanni Bia, who's the Deputy Special Representative of the SecGen for West Africa and the Sahel. Giovanni, are you there? Take your mute button. Can't hear you. On vous entend pas parce que votre micro ne marche pas. Can we unmute her, Paulo? Attendez,
I cannot. I cannot unmute people.
Okay, Giovanni, you have to unmute your mic. It's not. You're still not doing it.
C'est lequel qui marche? S'il vous plaît, Monsieur le Président.
Oui.
Oui, je ne sais pas, nous avons un agenda et dans cet agenda, celui qu'on nous a soumis, il y a le ministère de la Femme aussi qui devrait dire quelque chose. Je ne sais pas
OK,
si
oui,
ça a changé.
on est heureux, on ne savait pas. Franchement,
OK.
j'avais pas cette information, mais
OK.
je suis heureux d'entendre de Madame, c'est Madame Bacouan qui est là?
Oui, merci beaucoup. Juste 2 minutes.
Ah, ça va, oui, absolument. OK, if you'll wait, Giovanni, we're going to hear from Madame Bacouan.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you, His Excellency. My name is Dorcas Dr. Chandraburgo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Fund for Women Income Generating Activities. And it's a national fund put by the government of Burkina Faso. And I'm representing the ministry in charge of women and humanitarian actions. So with the leadership of our president of Burkina Faso and the whole government, a lot of action has been taken regarding how we can handle the pandemic of COVID-19. And we can say that up to now, the government response for the COVID was really effective in the sense that they were able to provide around 8 billion for the women income generating activities. So this is my institution who's leading it. And we have already provided 1 billion to around 200,000 women. And I'm talking about women who have really low income, but they have activities. They're working hard every day. And because of the COVID-19, a lot of them have seen their income drop completely because they were not able to go outside because of the border closure. But with the fund that the government has put in place for them, we are able to manage a little bit, to help a little bit. But we still need some more funds to seeing the demand, that the demand is very high. And as I was saying, those are loans that we give to the women for their income generating activities. Usually the interest were 10%, but because of the COVID-19, the government has taken some steps and the interest rate has been dropped down to lower than 3%. And the women from the markets were very happy. We saw them, and because those are loans that will allow them to work and to go ahead to get back to their activities. Okay, so regarding the humanitarian actions, I will go ahead in French. Donc, concernant l'humanitaire, il y a 5 axes sectoriels que le ministère a mis en place. Donc, premièrement, il y a la prévention d'une crise alimentaire et nutritionnelle au sein des populations déplacées internes et des personnes vulnérables. Il y a aussi la prise en charge psychosociale, parce que cette crise de COVID a touché pas seulement l'aspect financier, mais l'aspect et non seulement l'aspect sanitaire, mais aussi l'aspect psychosocial, psychologique. Merci. Et donc, le troisième axe sur lequel nous travaillons, c'est l'appui aux moyens d'existence des personnes vulnérables. J'ai parlé tantôt des prêts que l'on a donnés aux femmes. Et ça, c'est pour les femmes qui ont une activité. Mais le gouvernement, à travers le ministère, a aussi mis en place, mais ça, c'est des dons, des subventions pour les femmes qui recevaient 20 000 francs par mois. Voilà, pendant 3 mois pour leur activité, pour leur subsistance. Et il y a aussi eu comme 4e axe la prévention de la pandémie du COVID-19 au sein des populations déplacées internes et des populations hautes aussi. Et le dernier point, c'est la coordination de toutes ces activités. Donc, c'est 4 axes qui sont bien organisés. Et dans le premier axe, nous pouvons dire que nous avons pu subventionner les céréales à plus de 83 000 ménages pauvres et avec des prix très bas. Et concernant le deuxième axe, il y a 1000 personnes affectées par les mesures qui ont bénéficié d'un appui psychosocial sociale. Et il y a aussi eu la prise en charge de détenus graciés et le retrait de 560 enfants en situation de rue. Concernant l'axe 3, qui est le moyen d'existence, l'appui aux moyens d'existence des personnes vulnérables, c'est ce que je disais tantôt, 20 000 francs ont été octroyés à 20 000 femmes des marchés et yards à travers les filets sociaux sont maintenus, soutenus par la Banque mondiale. Et l'axe 4, concernant la prévention, comment prévenir cette maladie, le gouvernement ne cesse de faire des sensibilisations au niveau de la population pour qu'on puisse prendre connaissance que la pandémie, la maladie est toujours là et plusieurs actions de sensibilisation sont faites aux personnes handicapées, aux personnes âgées, aux victimes d'exclusion sociale. Voilà. Merci. Donc, c'est ce que je pouvais dire sur ce qui est fait par le gouvernement à travers le ministère en charge de la femme.
Thank you so much. We did ask for a particular focus on women, and I appreciate it very much. And if I can just try to translate very briefly to sum up in English what we heard. 5 points. First one, stressing on the humanitarian assistance, the seriousness of the food shortage that we're seeing increasingly. And I think we know from the World Food Program and from OCHA, we know that this is a growing problem. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. Second, to focus on the psychosocial problems that people are facing. And I think, again, we all understand how critical that is. Third is loans and help for vulnerable people, people who are in particularly difficult circumstances and have no other access to funds. Fourth is obviously a focus on the prevention of COVID-19, continuing work on education programs, programs to sensitize the population and remind everyone that COVID is still there. An issue that is, if I may say so, not exclusively applied to Burkina Faso, but is a universal problem, as all of us are dealing with this in every country. And finally, the role of coordination, which the ministry has, which is exceptionally important in making sure that this work all comes together. So thank you so much for that. Now I want to be clear, are there other people from the government or from the social and private sectors in Burkina Faso who wish to add some comments? Because if they do, they can do so now. And then I'm going to turn it over to Giovanni if she's got her mic problem solved.
Hello, good morning. Do you hear me this time?
I do hear you now, Giovanni. If you can just wait, because I want to make sure that we've heard from all those who wanted to speak from Burkina Faso, because we've had some mixed information as to who was going to speak, but that's fine. We're very informal here. There's no protocol that we won't bend in order to get people's voices in front of us. So if there are others to come forward, just let us know and we will add them to the group. Okay, Giovanni, why don't you go ahead, and then we'll if others want to join, we'll add them on later. Giovanni, go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning again, and thank you very much, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen. So, Mr. Chair, you said that it's your, if I understand correctly, that it's your 6th week in the function. So it's my 5th week. So it's a real pleasure for me to represent, you know, us on behalf of SRSG Chambers in today's Peace Building Commission meeting, as we look at the impact of the COVID-19 on sustaining peace in Burkina Faso. I would like to thank His Excellency Prime Minister Dabire and Minister Zure for providing a sobering overview of how the country is now grappling with the triple crisis of insecurity, growing humanitarian needs, and the impact of COVID-19 confinement measures, all of which are eroding social cohesion. I would also like to thank Madame Bado for her moving presentation of COVID impact on women, but most importantly, about the measures that the government have already put in place to respond not only to COVID, but to this very complex environment and situation. We have heard already that the pandemic has indeed been an aggravating factor. the recent interim report of the Integrated Food Security phase classification of the WFP indicates a 50% increase of food insecure people from 2.2 million to 3.3 million due to the combined impact of insecurity, climate variability, and closure of borders as part of containment measures. Insecurity and COVID-19 restrictions also exacerbated food insecurity and malnutrition cases, and further reducing humanitarian access. Now, with over 1 million internally displaced persons, accounting for 5% of the country's population, and more than 200,000 children acutely malnourished, humanitarian assistance remains crucial. Local communities cannot endure more hardships, and we urge national authorities and partners to focus their economic response where it is most felt, at the community, local level, with a special attention to women, children, and youth. We would like also to recognize the government efforts and the programs that they have put in place to respond to this pandemic, but also to the triple crisis that they are really facing during this time. In this context, the UN agencies, under the leadership of the resident and humanitarian coordinator, has continued to reinforce field presence, albeit under COVID-19 restrictions. We responded to the pandemic while at the same time facilitating delivery of emergency assistance, in particular through the provision of essential services to fragile zones and most vulnerable populations. Burkina Faso was among the first countries to receive assistance from the Central Emergency Response Fund and was also part of the global COVID-19 humanitarian response plan. The country team is currently supporting the government in assessing further the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic. The findings and recommendations will inform how we adapt our support going forward. And we are very glad to see that the person representing the Ministry of Women has already laid out some of the actions that have been put in place to respond to this pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the COVID-19 pandemic, progress was noted in some critical areas. The country has continued to face security-related protection and human rights challenges. But national authorities took bold and positive decisions, requesting the strengthening of human rights capacities through the opening of fully fledged UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Since the last Peacebuilding Commission meeting, the country team has received the pledges from bilateral partners to support coherent interventions in the humanitarian, development, and peace nexus. And we heard the government about the programs that are already in place. We have strengthened prevention and resilience building, always maintaining the alignment with government priorities. We looked at the immediate needs, as well as the longer-term lens of the sustaining peace agenda to prevent a reversal of development achievements. The UN country team is identifying pressure points and actors to strengthen the peace-building pillar of the Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. The UN country team's conflict prevention and social cohesion efforts through the Peacebuilding Fund have also gained traction. Confidence building between defense forces, proximity police, local administration, and population has improved. We begin to see a positive change in the relationship between the population, defense forces, and public administration. Our support to the national security sector reform also made strides with the continued support of the Peacebuilding Fund. Both the national strategy and the projet de loi on the national security architecture have been finalized and will be soon presented to the National Assembly. Our political level support to this project continues, as it will strengthen our strategic contribution to building a human-centered security system for all Burkinabe. I wish to thank the PBF for this critical support, together with the other peace-building activities being supported by the PBF, which include social cohesion, prevention of violent extremism, and prevention of conflicts resulting from the competition of resources between transhumance and the agropastoral activities. The upcoming elections will be decisive for consolidating democratic principles and the stability of Burkina Faso. We are fully aware that these elections are taking place amidst daunting security, political, legal, and humanitarian challenges, including risk of disenfranchisement of voters who were forced to flee their homes because of insecurity. We commend the country for sustaining political dialogue, ensuring consensus building around the revised calendar, creating conditions for an inclusive and transparent process. With the above in mind, on the part of UNOWAS, we ensure that SRSG Chambas maintains engagement with key national actors in the preparation of the election. Just like we did in all countries going to elections this year, we held a discussion with the President of the Commission Électorale Nationale Indépendante in July. So the government and all relevant actors have done their best to follow the electoral calendar despite the COVID-19 interrupting registration and delaying other electoral preparations. With a broad political consensus, amendments to the electoral code have been introduced to preempt the risks of additional difficulties during the polls. Safety protocols have been developed. Yet again, the country faces a litmus test, and it is imperative for Burkina Faso to pass this test. SRSG Chambas will be visiting Burkina Faso in the coming days as part of his good office's engagement in countries heading for elections. We have been working with the resident coordinator's office to host a stakeholders forum in order to build consensus and encourage inclusive, transparent, and peaceful elections. Ladies and gentlemen, the UN has shown its resolute commitment and solidarity with Burkina Faso in these trying times. We will maintain the same level of engagement during the elections in November, so critical to maintain the country on the path to stability and prosperity. This commission has been a steadfast partner of Burkina Faso during the last few years, as also demonstrated in the increased international support to the country's peace-building priorities as a result of the 5th March Peace-Building Commission meeting. We count on the Peace-Building Commission and the international community to continue to accompany Burkina Faso beyond the elections of November in order to consolidate the peace-building gains and address the long-term socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 and supporting the government efforts in responding to this complex situation. I thank you for your attention and look forward to our discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You are muted.
We're all imperfect. We all share our imperfections. I want to thank you. I thought it was very comprehensive, and I thought it was very helpful to get that kind of an overview is very important. Now, we turn the micro over to Oscar, who's going to add his comments, our illustrious leader. Go ahead, Oscar.
Thank you very much, Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me again start by thanking the Chair for convening what I think is a very timely meeting, and to all the members of the PBC for their commitment to continue supporting Burkina Faso in pursuing its peace-building priorities. Sustained support from the Peace-Building Commission and the Peace-Building Fund have so far yielded positive outcomes, despite the many obstacles that we heard. We meet today to discuss, to preserve the progress that has been made and to help the country actually address the latest challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic for peace building and sustaining peace. And I would also like to add my warm welcome and thanks to the Prime Minister, His Excellency Davide, as well as the many briefers today for their very substantive and very insightful briefings. I am particularly happy to see the many women briefers, and I think this bodes very well for the future of the Peacebuilding Commission, that we have such strong representation from the field, bringing to the core of our discussion pertinent issues that define the peacebuilding challenges going forward. I think it's extremely important to note that a week from now, the Commission will be meeting again to discuss the peacebuilding progress and challenges in the Sahel region. And in just 2 weeks from today, a ministerial roundtable will be organized by the governments of Denmark and Germany, the European Union, and the United Nations that will be discussing the humanitarian situation in the Central Sahel, including countries of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These engagements actually demonstrate this renewed commitment of the international community to set up efforts in support of Burkina Faso and the region, and are particularly welcome at a time when the humanitarian, development, and peace-building challenges are made ever greater by the pandemic. From the onset of the pandemic, this commission has been discussing its impact on peace building and sustaining peace, and in terms of the efforts of the different countries and the regions under its consideration, calling for global solidarity, echoing the Secretary General's call for this global solidarity, and underscoring the importance of multilateral cooperation in the fight against it. As already highlighted in previous PBC discussions, and the SG's recently released a report on peace building and sustaining peace, the need for integrated approaches that bring together humanitarian, development, and peace building actors cannot but be overstressed. This is especially true for Burkina Faso, where coordinated international efforts in support of the country's development and peace building priorities is needed now more than ever before. And in this regard, it is encouraging to hear about the proactive measures of the government in collaboration with regional and international partners to curb the spread of the virus, to assist the population in responding to immediate needs while seeking ways to address the long-term socio-economic impact. The UN, in collaboration with partners, is making adjustments to integrate the challenges of COVID-19 in its assistance to Burkina Faso. And here again, there's an opportunity for the Peacebuilding Commission to promote these coherent approaches to the international assistance to Burkina Faso, building again on the experience of the government-led Prevention and Peacebuilding Assessment, the PPBA, that was a joint exercise undertaken with the World Bank, the Africa Development Bank, the European Union, and the United Nations, which the Prime Minister alluded to, and which actually laid the ground for identifying top priorities for our collective support and response. Let me just mention very quickly the UN's successful partnership with the World Bank and other multilateral institutions through this joint assessment exercise, which has opened the door for the current planning phase, which aims again to inject a conflict-sensitive approach to the upcoming National Development Plan that was described, and to further consolidate this coherent approach to support Burkina Faso. And I am particularly encouraged by the ongoing discussions between the government and the World Bank on the new Prevention and Resilience Allocation, the PRA, which will significantly boost available resources towards the country-led prevention milestones. And I would possibly like to add to this the importance of further collaboration on data and joint analytics to better understand the impact of COVID on social cohesion. Quickly, my good friend and colleague, ASG Bia, who just started her presence in UNOWA and support to the region, mentioned the areas of priority support of the Peacebuilding Fund. Burkina Faso has recently been, again, declared eligible for peace building funding. So we have an ongoing program of some $19.3 million focused on those critical areas. What the fund is aiming to do is supporting those national priorities and supporting the UN country team's effort to address conflict prevention by supporting local dialogue initiatives among different ethnic groups and developing a conflict resolution strategies to address the root causes of the conflict. The building of trust and the promotion of dialogue and trust building between government and the populations that are resulting from these programs have already seen very important positive signs, especially with regards to the levels of trust between population, the defense forces, and the public administration. Let me just finish with this, Mr. Chair, just to thank this commission for helping to ensure this sustained attention to the peace building and sustaining peace priorities in Burkina Faso. And again, to reiterate to our briefers from Burkina Faso, the full and total commitment of PBSO, DPPA, and the Secretary General's Peace Building Fund to continue to finance catalytic and leveraging mechanisms that can build further assistance to meet the priority needs of the government. Thank you very much.
A terrific overview, much appreciated. We're now going to turn to the comments from member states and others. Really would encourage everyone to keep their remarks to 3 minutes. The list has been posted on the chat function, but let me just tell you who the next 7 speakers are. Ghana, Martha's here. Egypt, Mohammed. Morocco, Omar. Japan, Kimihiro. Martin from Denmark. Ronaldo from Brazil, and then Nathalie from France. That's the first 7 speakers. If you could keep it to as close to 3 minutes as possible, would be appreciated. So over to you, Martha.
Thank you very much, Excellency Ambassador Bob Ray, and thank you for convening this very important meeting to discuss the security, socioeconomic, as well as the humanitarian impact of COVID-19 in Burkina Faso. And I want to use this opportunity to express appreciation also to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso, and the ministers who have given us an excellent briefing on what measures Burkina Faso at the national level is making towards addressing COVID-19 and taking the country forward. Indeed, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked unprecedented disruption and exacerbated security, humanitarian, and development challenges in Burkina Faso, especially in the areas under threat of terrorist attacks and as regards internally displaced persons. It is disturbing to note that as of August 2020, the number of IDPs had reached over 1 million, and the impact on the economy is enormous, as it has also led to a reduction in growth from 6.3% to 2%, and a fall in public revenues, a situation that many countries are facing, but when it comes to a country that is seriously challenged, like Burkina Faso, it becomes more dire. Of course, Mr. Chair, the point needs to be made that the proliferation of various armed groups, including jihadists and self-defense movements in Burkina Faso, is a matter of concern. And these developments have further worsened the socioeconomic impacts of the disease. The current chair of ECOWAS, as many of you would know, is Ghana, and we are deeply concerned about the security challenges as well as the impact of the pandemic in West Africa, the Sahel region, and Burkina Faso in particular. We are therefore committed to collaborating with all relevant stakeholders, including the PBC, in particular to addressing the situation in our neighboring country of Burkina Faso. I wish to commend the diverse initiatives in support of the government of Burkina Faso undertaken under the auspices of the PBC. We also wish to welcome initiatives executed under the Emergency Program for the Sahel, as well as cross-border cooperation activities by the PBF in the Liptako-Gorma area, which focuses on building the capacity of women and youth in the prevention of violent extremism, as well as fostering their participation in local decision-making, among others. These interventions are germane in ensuring that the impact of the pandemic does not reverse progress in achieving gender equality and women's empowerment, as well as the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security Agenda. The importance of mainstreaming and enhancing youth participation in all stages of peace building, nationally, regionally, and at the continental level, as we all know, in accordance with the Continental Framework on Youth, Peace and Security of the AU, is critical. There is a real need to launch people-centered development projects, as indicated in the presentations that we have heard this morning. And I'm glad to also hear that ASG Taranko talked about the multi-partner approach to meeting the funding needs of Burkina Faso, because we need to situate whatever assistance we do within a holistic framework that makes sense for the priority needs of the country. Going forward, Mr. Chair, and in conclusion, my delegation wishes to encourage continuous collaboration in deepening the existing partnership between the UN, the African Union, and of course, ECOWAS, through regular consultations in order to help strengthen the collaboration and synergy efforts in addressing the socioeconomic challenges confronting countries in difficulty in the region. This will, of course, also enhance ownership of PBC activities by the leadership in the region and whip up the political will towards addressing the crisis in Burkina Faso and the Sahel at large. I wish to indicate that the PBC remains an indispensable body towards the building and sustaining peace, and call for the continuous support of member states to this commission, including in the area of funding to enable it achieve its very critical mandate. Thank you for convening this meeting on Burkina Faso, for letting us see, having the opportunity to have the government and the people, private sector, highlight the challenges they're facing and how we as a United Nations body here in New York can enhance their actions towards reaching the desired goals. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Martha. Mohammed from Egypt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for convening this important meeting, and allow me to also acknowledge and appreciate the presence of His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso, and the honorable ministers from Burkina and other representatives who enriched this discussion, and to appreciate and thank the speeches by the DSRSG for West Africa and the Sahel, and ASG for PBSO for their comprehensive and informative briefings. This overview provided, Mr. Chairman, by the government of Burkina Faso shows the destabilizing socioeconomic implications of COVID-19 in Burkina. And in this regard, I wish to commend the tireless efforts of the government of Burkina Faso in response to the pandemic that adds up to the already existing challenges. In this connection, I express to my brothers and sisters in Burkina Faso, Egypt, strong solidarity and commitment to help them in the path towards sustainable peace and development. It's also encouraging to see the government of Burkina Faso taking the initiative and identifying the national peace-building priorities, including through the submission of the matrix of priority actions of the emergency program for the Sahel for 2020-2021, which included the most urgent prevention and peace-building activities in the regions affected by instability, and encompassed the areas of security and the rule of law, social services, local governance, and resilience and social cohesion. This matrix has been shared with the relevant authorities in Egypt to see areas where support can be provided, including through the technical support and capacity building and training programs organized by the Egyptian Agency of Partnership for Development and the Cairo International Center for Peacekeeping and Peace Building. In this connection, Egypt, in close coordination with the AU Commission, is finalizing the launch of activities of the AU Center for Post-Conflict Reconstruction and Development to complement efforts aimed at advancing peace-building priorities of the continent, and I believe that Burkina Faso can benefit from this center when it becomes operational soon. Mr. Chairman, today's meeting is timely as Burkina Faso is preparing for general elections in November 2020 amidst multifaceted and complex challenges exacerbated by COVID-19. It's incumbent on us as PBC to sustain international attention and mobilize additional support in response to Burkina Faso's peace-building priorities. The World Bank and IMF have a significant role to play in that regard. The call made by the AU for debt relief and the provision of economic stimulus packages remains valid in this situation. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, I can't emphasize enough the importance of regional and integrated approach to peace building in Burkina Faso that takes into account the transboundary challenges in the Sahel at large. Moreover, coherence of efforts of the multiple actors involved in the region is a key to ensure the effectiveness of peace-building activities. Mr. Chair, I wish to reiterate Egypt's strong and unwavering support to the government and the people of Burkina Faso in face of the multiple challenges they confront. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Omar, you're next.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président, et permettez-moi de remercier et saluer Son Excellence le Premier ministre du Burkina Faso pour sa présence et surtout pour l'excellente présentation exhaustive qu'il nous a fait sur la situation dans son pays et son impact socio-économique dramatique sur ce pays frère. Now I will switch to English. Mr. President, Morocco highly welcomes this meeting, and more particularly its country-specific focus on Burkina Faso, a sister country that is leading a fight on several fronts. This country is deploying tremendous effort to apprehend countless and merciless threats that range from the worsening of the security situation in the Sahel region, pervasive terrorist risk, the adverse effect of climate change, or the latest protracted global crisis caused by COVID. As we have clearly heard today, we are not dealing with a regular predicament when it comes to Burkina Faso, but a perfect trifecta of security, humanitarian, and economic crisis, conjugating old and new threats. This unprecedented situation has a negative impact on women and youth, and can potentially squander the achievement of development goals and halt or worse, reverse decades of hard-won peace-building gains. This is why my country wishes to seize this opportunity to commend the continued effort deployed by the government of Burkina Faso, as well as the immediate actions and remarkable work that have been undertaken in order to address pressing challenges, all the while fighting the impact of the COVID and preparing for the presidential election on 22 of November. Indeed, Mr. Chair, Morocco has continuously advocated that the fight against the COVID cannot overshadow the cardinal importance of the socio-economic development. In this regard, I wish to stress the imperative for the international community to support the government of Burkina Faso in generously funding the matrix of priority actions contained within, and I quote, the 2020-2021 emergency program for the Sahel, as also presented in our last meeting held in March. What is now needed is for all partners of Burkina Faso, the PBC, and international financial institutions to make an urgent, harmonized, and supportive stand to contribute to this strengthening of vital areas such as the rule of law, social services, local governance, resilience, and social cohesion. This is what Morocco will continue to promote through the PBC and on a bilateral level based on the excellent brotherly relationship and in full support and solidarity with the people and government of Burkina Faso. It is worth noting that His Majesty King Mohammed VI of Morocco gave his high instruction for the sending of essential medical assistance and equipment and material to Burkina Faso in order to fight COVID. It is our continued duty to grant appropriate attention to the needs of Burkina Faso in this dire situation and to support the tireless effort of the government. The PBC has indeed played a significant part in trying to shed light on the situation in Burkina, and we call on our Commission to further mobilize support to discuss immediate and long-term socio-economic challenges with key international partners, including regional organizations, in full respect of national priorities and ownership. Our Commission could most specifically help follow on the commitments expressed by partners and encourage implementation, as well as help securing sufficient funding for the emergency program for the Sahel. We also commend the work of the PBF in Burkina Faso and its contribution to the strengthening of key peace-building areas, such as the security sector reform, national reconciliation, the prevention of violent extremism, and women and youth empowerment. I thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Omar. As always, Kimihiro from Japan.
Yes. Well, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je suis très impressionné et encouragé par les allocutions du Premier ministre et personnalité de Burkina Faso, par lesquelles ils ont fait part de la détermination de faire face aux difficultés dans lesquelles se trouve le peuple burkinabé et qui essaie de se les convaincre. But still, Japan is concerned about the humanitarian situation in Burkina Faso, especially the increasing number of internally displaced persons, mainly due to terrorist attacks. And we're also concerned about economic difficulties people of Burkina Faso is undergoing, and especially its impact, negative impact upon the ladies and girls, mainly due to COVID-19. And we also express heartfelt sympathies to those who have suffered from severe floods in recent months across the Sahel region, including your country. We commend all efforts to respond to immediate humanitarian needs and to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. This year alone, that's why Japan has already provided a total of $9.8 million for emergency humanitarian grant aid to Burkina Faso, including for the COVID-19 response. So Japan stands by the people and the government of Burkina Faso. Well, security is of paramount importance to the people of Burkina Faso. Japan commends the effort of government of Burkina Faso for prioritizing security sector reform and the rule of law. There is no one-size-fits-all approach applicable to the whole country. The best institutional arrangement for each region and locality need to be explored through close consultation and coordination among security actors and local residents. The goal should be to establish effective and accountable institutional arrangements. And this is, I think, how people can have equal access to the basic services they need. And presidential and parliamentary elections to be held on November the 22nd will mark an important milestone toward the country's stability. The successful implementation will be essential to gaining people's trust in the state and to assuring international and regional partners who are awaiting to provide further assistance and investment. All political leaders and other key stakeholders must join hands to create an enabling environment so that people can vote without security concerns. And to tailor these efforts to local contexts, Japan welcomes the role of the UN integrated hubs to 5 regions in Burkina Faso under the leadership of the resident coordinator. Japan also commends the important role of the Peace-Building Fund in integrating the activities of UN entities and other actors, as well as catalyzing additional funding. Through its new approach for peace and stability in Africa, NAPSA, launched during the TICAD 7 last year, Japan assists build institutional capacity in African countries. In Burkina Faso, Japan has supported UNDP's vocational training program for the vulnerable populations, including youth, women, and internally displaced persons. The overall aim is to ensure human security and strengthen local resilience in coordination with local authorities. So let me conclude by reiterating Japan's commitment to continued support, including through the role in the PBC for peace and stability in Burkina Faso and the wider region. I thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Martin, you're up.
Thanks, Bob. Mr. Chair, Mr. Prime Minister, all protocol observed. I want to start by underlining our long partnership with Burkina Faso, indeed our friendship. We are firmly committed to this friendship, this partnership. In fact, the reason why I'm taking the floor today and why it wasn't perhaps my minister is because he's actually just returned from a trip to Burkina Faso. He just spent the last couple of days in Futrogui and in Luda and of course in Ouagadougou, talking with colleagues and friends. I just want to say that Denmark is firmly committed to counter the negative effects of the COVID-19 crisis, doing what we can to help our friends and colleagues ensure sustainable development, but also enhancing peace in Burkina Faso, as well as you might add the broader Sahel region. Our engagement goes from humanitarian assistance to development, our development partnerships, but also to, let's say, our contributions at the harder end of the spectrum, you know, our contributions to MINUSMA, our contributions to Operation Barkhane, that seeks to counter terrorist groups in the tri-border area between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, in collaboration, of course, with the G5 Sahel and the Burkinabe authorities. I want to say personally, I've been to Burkina Faso many times, and it saddens me that the humanitarian situation has worsened rapidly since the Peacebuilding Commission last spoke on Burkina Faso in March. We've seen the highest increase in acute food insecurity, and as the number of people in crisis has almost tripled compared with pre-COVID-19. This is no longer a situation of early warning of food insecurity, rather hunger is unfolding as we speak. And I think the international community has an obligation to help the people of Burkina Faso in this crisis. And I think we need to focus on three priority issues to be able to provide appropriate support with both short-term and long-term peace and development efforts in Burkina Faso. First, I think increased and rapid funding. And second, we need to deploy a holistic approach that combines humanitarian development and peace efforts. And third, we really need to do what we have said so often we will, and that is leave no one behind. And that includes women, girls, and youth. On funding, Oscar already mentioned the need, but also mentioned that Denmark, together with Germany, the European Union, and the UN, is preparing a ministerial roundtable, a virtual one, on Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger on 20th of October, to gather political momentum and to mobilize support for humanitarian challenges in a long-term perspective. And it is our hope that generous pledges will be made at the conference to the benefit of the populations of the Central Sahel countries. I mean, they are urgently needed. But I think it's also not only about funding, it's also about the way we work. And I think this brings me to my second point, which concerns the need for an integrated and holistic approach where we are coordinated among the many actors on the ground. Now, humanitarian development and peace-building efforts must go hand in hand, also in handling the socioeconomic consequences of COVID-19. And this means identifying and promoting solutions that respond to immediate humanitarian needs, of course, but does so in a way that promote lasting impact and solutions. So we need to adopt a conflict-sensitive approach to humanitarian development programming and base our responses on the needs and realities of affected populations. And this brings me to my third and final point, and that, of course, is that we must leave no one behind. And I think very much in line with the call by the PBC itself, we from Denmark's side advocating very much an inclusive approach, which first of all leaves no one behind, but actually also involves and engages people, helps ensure that the pandemic does not reverse the hard-won progress that we've made on gender equality and women and girls' rights and empowerment. We have contributed approximately $7.5 million to UNICEF's global COVID-19 response plan, which ensured that almost 50,000 girls benefited from distance learning, and more than 25,000 girls were reached by community-based psychosocial support services. This year, 2020, is not only the year of COVID-19, It is also 20th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, an agenda which is under global pressure, which can seem odd because it is such an obvious agenda. It is such a self-evident agenda, and we must ensure and we must continue our effort to advance and promote women's active participation in conflict prevention and peace building, not least in time of COVID-19. That is actually the best insurance we can make to ensure that efforts are long-lasting, that they actually have the impact we need to see. And in closing, I just want to say that our efforts to support Burkina Faso in steering through this crisis and preventing future ones, I mean, they must embrace an integrated cross-pillar approach, but also a framework that spans bilateral, multilateral, regional, and local actors. We must stop working in silos, not only within our own system, but actually also across the entire system. We must work together. We all wish to see real change on the ground for the Burkinabe people. But to achieve this goal, it's essential that we commit to working together and leveraging all tools, capacities, and expertise at collective disposal. Thank you so much, Bob, for giving me the floor, and thank you to everybody else.
Thank you, Martin. We now turn to a colleague from Brazil, Ronaldo.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président, pour l'organisation de cette importante réunion. Je voudrais aussi remercier Son Excellence le Premier ministre d'Alire et à tous nos collègues de Burkina Faso, du NOAS et du PBSO pour ces présentations à cette commission. Mr. Chairman, during past interactions, Brazil has consistently been stressing that our collective response to COVID-19 should strive to balance short and long-term support with a view to harmonizing humanitarian assistance with the need to continue promoting structural development and peace-building goals. Moreover, in terms of guidelines for effective engagement, one can never overemphasize the centrality of the principles of sovereignty and of national ownership and leadership for peace building. So allow me to welcome the focus of this meeting on the socioeconomic implications of COVID-19 in Burkina Faso. We appreciate the opportunity to listen to the Burkinabe colleagues say themselves what their priorities to build and sustain peace are. I am sure we all took good note of the plans and policies discussed today, and through this dialogue, we will be better able to coordinate and improve cooperation efforts to the benefit of the people of Burkina Faso. Through bilateral means, Brazil has been developing South-South cooperation projects with a view to contribute to efforts of Burkina Faso and other Sahel countries to promote peace and development in their region. Among our flagship initiatives, the Cotton 4 project aims at strengthening the cotton production chain in Benin, Chad, Togo, Mali, and Burkina Faso through the transfer of Brazilian technology. After listening to today's presentation, I am convinced that there are many other areas in which Brazil and Burkina Faso can continue to strengthen their collaboration. For instance, I was also particularly interested in hearing from Madame Badou on Burkinabe policies to protect and empower women and families. These are also elements that Brazil sees as crucial to every effort to build peace and development. To conclude, allow me to reiterate Brazil's commitment to remain a partner of the people of Burkina Faso, as well as to reiterate our call to the international community as a whole to redouble its support to Burkina Faso's peace building and development priorities, including with a view to assist the country a speedy recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ronaldo. Just to give you an update on the list, Nathalie is next, then Gunther, then Khaled, Magnus, Mark, James, Hans, and then we go to the experts. So DPRs are next. Nathalie.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président. President, Excellencies, dear colleagues, I think the English version of my intervention has been circulated. I hope so. And so out of regard with our colleagues from Burkina, I will now switch to French if you allow me to. Je remercie le Canada d'avoir organisé cette réunion et je salue vraiment la participation de l'éminente délégation du gouvernement du Burkina Faso et en premier lieu de son Premier ministre pour leurs interventions extrêmement intéressantes. Le travail de l'ONU et de la CCP au Burkina Faso est absolument essentiel au regard des crises sécuritaires et humanitaires que traverse le pays, comme nous l'avons vu. Je souhaiterais juste centrer aujourd'hui mon intervention sur deux messages principaux. Le premier concerne la lutte contre le Covid. Tout d'abord, pour dire que la France salue les mesures qui ont été prises par le Burkina Faso, qui ont permis de contenir l'épidémie. L'Union européenne, avec le soutien de ses membres dans la France, a mis en place un pont aérien humanitaire pour assurer la continuité des actions humanitaires et appuyer la réponse sanitaire, médicale à la crise au Burkina. Et c'est dans ce cadre que notre secrétaire d'État chargé des affaires européennes s'est rendu le 22 juin au Burkina Faso avec la commissaire européenne chargée des partenariats internationaux. Mais les conséquences économiques et sociales de la pandémie sont toutefois extrêmement préoccupantes. Nos intervenants précédents l'ont souligné. Le pays connaît une crise humanitaire et sécuritaire extrêmement grave. Et nous devons donc collectivement intensifier notre soutien en faveur de l'aide humanitaire et de l'aide au développement accordée au Burkina. Dans le cadre du plan de riposte des autorités burkinabées, je voudrais rappeler que la France a accordé en 2020 un appui budgétaire de 7 millions d'euros qui se décline sur les volets sanitaires et sociaux et que nous avons également augmenté notre aide humanitaire à la fois via le HCR, le PAM, le CICR et notamment avec un versement de 4 millions d'euros au PAM compte tenu de la situation de la sécurité alimentaire. Je saisis également l'occasion de notre réunion aujourd'hui pour appeler de nouveau à la mise en œuvre de la résolution 2532 sur la lutte contre le Covid. Il s'agit de garantir une cessation générale et immédiate des hostilités dans toutes les situations à l'ordre du jour du Conseil de sécurité. Ce afin d'assurer un acheminement sûr, sans entrave et durable de l'aide humanitaire dont ont besoin les populations et si cruellement besoin. Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, mon deuxième message concerne les élections. Les élections du 22 novembre. L'insécurité est une menace pour la bonne tenue du scrutin dans l'ensemble du territoire. Et par ailleurs, le processus d'enrôlement électoral n'a pas atteint ses objectifs initiaux, comme nous l'avons vu, ce notamment en milieu rural et auprès de la jeunesse. Or, il est essentiel que les élections soient conduites dans des conditions sûres, inclusives, pour consolider les acquis démocratiques de 2014 et 2015. Nous encourageons donc les autorités burkinabées à prendre toutes les mesures pour permettre au plus grand nombre d'électeurs d'être en mesure de voter. De notre point de vue, cela passe par deux types d'actions. D'une part, une campagne de communication nationale afin de toucher l'ensemble des électeurs sur l'ensemble du territoire et d'autre part, de garantir autant que possible les conditions de sécurité pour permettre encore une fois au plus grand nombre de citoyens, quelle que soit leur communauté et quelle que soit leur région d'origine, de pouvoir exprimer leur voix le 22 novembre. À cet égard, je souhaiterais d'ailleurs interroger les autorités burkinabées sur les mesures qu'elles envisagent de prendre pour sécuriser le scrutin, notamment dans les zones les plus touchées par les violences. Et pour les interroger également sur la façon dont la Commission de consolidation de la paix pourrait les aider. C'est très important, évidemment, de cibler au mieux l'aide qui sera accordée. En tout cas, la France accompagnera le processus électoral au Burkina, à la fois en soutenant des projets dans le domaine de l'observation électorale, mais également de l'appui aux médias, de l'appui aux organisations de la société civile et de renforcement des institutions électorales. Enfin, bien sûr, nous saluons la mobilisation de l'Union européenne, de l'ensemble des partenaires et surtout des Nations unies à travers le Fonds pour la consolidation de la paix dont l'appui est si important. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Ambassador, you're muted.
Am I unmuted now? Yes, okay. So Germany, Gunther.
Bob, thank you very much. Prime Minister, ministers, dear colleagues. First of all, thanks a lot for the initiative by Burkina Faso to seek this meeting. It's an excellent occasion to exchange ideas. I would like to first of all express our sympathy and condolences on the death of 25 persons who have been killed in the night of the 4th of October near the center-north region of Burkina Faso in a despicable attack against a group of internally displaced persons. I would like to touch upon three issues in my brief statement: the German support to Burkina Faso, the challenges surrounding the upcoming elections, and the development in the regions. Let me start with a word on German engagement in Burkina Faso. We are indeed, I'm proud to say, one of the biggest donors. Germany has made available more than 70 million euros for 2020 and 2021. We have deployed a military advisory group to Burkina Faso in April of this year, drawing on our solid cooperation on security-related issues. We are also supporting the Burkinabe authorities by strengthening capacities to fight organized crime, cybercrime, and to foster integrated border management. Germany is a staunch supporter of the Peace Building Fund, contributing some 40 million euros in 2019. I'm confident that we will continue this commitment. On the upcoming elections on the 22nd of November, here too, we stand ready to support. We are engaged in the projet d'appui au processus électoraux du Burkina Faso, implemented by our great partner UNDP. We find it very, very important, and this is a plea to the representatives of the Burkinabe government with us here, that it be ensured that we have a broad and inclusive electoral process. This implies, I believe, first of all, ensuring the security of the electoral process in all regions. Needless to say, we condemn and will continue to condemn any violation of human rights in the context of the elections, regardless of which party is behind such violations. And I would like to highlight once again the utmost importance of women's rights and the participation of women. I'm very glad to hear that this has been highlighted by several colleagues in the course of our discussion. My last point is on the regional implications. Well, speaking for Germany, peace and security in the entire region is becoming an issue of ever-growing significance. We feel very strongly our security and our well-being is closely intertwined with that of your region. We are feeling more and more that we are indeed neighbors. And this is why we will certainly continue to work hard to improve the continuing volatile and often worrying security situation in the region. Let me just give one example. As co-chair, together with Algeria, of the West Africa Working Group of the Global Counter-Terrorism Forum, we are intensifying our support, and there are many other initiatives that are linked to this regional approach that we have, and we find it of utmost importance to see the development in Burkina Faso, namely regarding peace, security, and stability in a broader regional context. Thank you very much. Bob, over to you.
So much. Appreciate hearing from you very much, Gunter. Thank you. Khaled.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I thank, first of all, let me begin with to thank you and thank the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso and all the ministers, previous speakers. Today we are challenging, we are facing today, namely the coronavirus pandemic, which it's very difficult for everyone. This is very different from all previous one that it's made the entire world and the international community one front, fighting one battle and one enemy. An enemy that makes no distinction with regard to religion, color, race, or gender. We are in need to include international cooperation if we are to win this battle against this pandemic, which it advises social, economic, and humanitarian impacts in all countries. Through Saudi Arabia, through its presidency of G20 this year, we were able to unite and coordinate efforts globally. So the kingdom took initiative to hold an exceptional summit for global response to combating the pandemic, which resulted positively in mitigating the effects of this pandemic. As G20 country took unprecedented measures to support the economy during this summit, including pumping $11 trillion to support the global economy. We also value the efforts to peace building and reducing conflict in Burkina Faso, and to enhance social cohesion and to ensure sustainable development in Burkina Faso and in the region. And the importance of intensifying efforts in support for peace building and process and conflict reduction and all raising capabilities and support to maintain the security and stability in Burkina Faso. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has provided financial support to joint force to combat terrorism in the countries of African Sahel, and humanitarian support through King Salman and through the Saudi Development Bank in Burkina Faso, also in the area. And we will continue our efforts to engage the humanitarian development support as well as providing support to the G5 Sahel force to counter terrorism in West Africa. In conclusion, we value your efforts during this meeting and reaffirm our commitment to joint international cooperation to face the challenges of this pandemic. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you very much, Khaled, for that overview. To Sweden now, Magnus, then to Mark from the Netherlands, and James from the UK.
Thank you, Ambassador, and a special welcome to His Excellency Prime Minister Davide. Sweden commends Burkina Faso's continued strong engagement with the Peace Building Commission in these very challenging times. Sweden is a committed partner to Burkina Faso, and earlier this week, our Minister for International Development Cooperation, Mr. Peter Eriksson, visited Burkina Faso, and I'm pleased to convey that the Minister highly appreciated the opportunity for substantive exchange with you, Prime Minister, President Kabore, and other officials. The Minister also had the opportunity to travel to Kaya and observe firsthand the tremendous challenges many Burkinabe are facing. Minister Eriksson exchanged views on the security and humanitarian challenges, and also on how to best tackle the health and socio-economic effects of COVID-19 in Burkina Faso. And he also underlined the importance of close collaboration between humanitarian development and peace-building actors, both during and after the pandemic. Chair, going forward, it is crucial to implement the results of the joint prevention and peace-building assessment and the matrix of priority actions of the emergency program for the Sahel. After our last meeting in March, Sweden was pleased to submit to the PBC a list of commitments in support of the matrix amounting to some $30 million. We support the collaboration between several ministries on reforms of the justice and security sectors with an aim to strengthen the legal security of vulnerable people, including through confidence building between the security forces and the local population. Sweden is very concerned by the allegations of human rights violations committed by security and defense forces. And during his visit, our minister conveyed how crucial it is that all actors, state and non-state, respect human rights and fight impunity. This builds trust and strengthens the foundation for democracy and the rule of law. And we reiterate the importance of free and fair democratic elections next month. Sweden supports the preparations with $1.5 million for the joint election fund managed by the UNDP. Regional cooperation and coordination remain crucial. This week, Sweden initiated a new support for ECOWAS for a 3-year, $7.5 million capacity building project to strengthen resilience to disasters and climate change in the Sahel, including Burkina Faso. Lastly, and once again, we welcome PBF's catalytical, flexible, and important engagement in Burkina Faso, especially during the pandemic. Chair, thank you for this timely and useful meeting.
Thank you very much. And thank you for outlining some specific steps that you're taking. It's very important for us to continue to do that as we go forward. Next, I have Mark from the Netherlands, then James from the UK, and Hans from Austria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly also thank you to the Prime Minister, to the other excellencies joining us from Burkina. And like my German colleague said, fantastic initiative. And I think that is exactly what this commission is for. And in that regard, actually, I learned of a wonderful proverb coming from Burkina Faso this morning. So I'm hoping I'm quoting this correctly. But the proverb that I heard was that if ants get together, they can lift an elephant. And that, for me, also signifies and just shows the value of a committee like this, of our joint efforts, because the challenges, as we've heard by basically all the speakers, are large. But if we do work together, we can overcome, and we will overcome. Because so much has already been said, I'll just limit my intervention to 3 points. One is a compliment, one is a worry, and the last one is a question. Now, my compliment goes to the response of the authorities to the COVID outbreak. That has been swift, and it has, in that sense, also been successful. You do not do this alone. We stand side by side with you. My government has committed 100 million euros to combat COVID in Africa in general. And over the next 2 years, we'll commit another 100 million euros for Burkina Faso specifically. My worry, though, is, and that has also been expressed on many occasions today already, is how this crisis comes on top of the already very difficult situation in the country. And I remember the session we had in March, and I remember UNHCR at the time also warning that at the end of this year, 1 million people would be forced to leave their homes. Now, we haven't reached the end of the year, but we have reached that milestone of 100 million people that have been forced to flee. We're seeing a potential 3.3 million people facing acute food insecurity, which of course are terrible figures. And these people are fleeing very real violence. And again, I'm looking at my German colleague who already expressed their condolences for the 25 people that were killed over the weekend. So does my government, of course. And they have unfortunately been 25 out of hundreds that have been killed over the last couple of months. We are also, at the same vein, want to underline that if you combat violent extremism, what is needed is constructive cooperation between the local population and security forces. And in that sense, respect of human rights is crucial in any effort to counter terrorism. And we're concerned by the reports of the discovery of mass graves in Djibo, and we've read the report of death of prisoners in police cells. And we want to underline how important it is that the results of these investigations are made public and that those responsible are held accountable, because in the end, it is indispensable for maintaining the trust of the population and, in that regard, jointly combating terrorism. And in general, at the heart of peace building is the notion that military means alone do not provide a solution to the conflicts. And that goes for Burkina Faso as well. At least as much effort needs to go into eliminating the root causes of violent conflict. Protection of civilians and human security lie at the heart of the response. Moreover, improving access to skills and jobs for Burkina's youth is critical, especially in the border regions. And together with international partners, my country is stepping up its efforts in supporting these areas. Let me conclude with a question, and that is that we've seen in the spring the first phase of the prevention and peace building assessment being presented by the authorities, which was excellent. And we'd be interested to hear what about the second phase of the prevention and peace building assessment, on the timing and the finalization of this. If we could get some more information on that, that would be much appreciated. And I thank you. Over to you again, Bob.
James, you're up.
Thanks very much, Bob, and thank you also for convening this, as others have said, at this really timely point. It's great to have Burkina Faso so firmly on our radar, and it's great to hear a really solutions focused conversation today. I like Mark's analogy about ants a lot, and I just want to say to all of our Burkinabe partners, we are ready to be the ants. I thought the conversation was particularly rich because the Prime Minister of Burkina Faso really engaged with great candor with us today. And I think, you know, the UK recognizes the profound challenges facing Burkina now with COVID-19 compounding the multiple other crises that they faced. And he set these out really clearly: the deteriorating security, the unprecedented levels of displacement, as we just heard from Mark, and the increasing humanitarian need. But we also really welcome the Prime Minister's government's plan to address these interrelated challenges in a coherent way. And that's why we're here, and that's why the PBC is here, to help frame these things, and to do this in close coordination with the international community. I think this helps PBC countries, and others in fact, make the case for support that's clearly aligned with Burkinabe priorities, but also focused on addressing the root causes of instability and poverty. And I just want to say the UK is also in direct contact with other global partners, including the WHO and the World Bank and the IMF, to ensure the necessary support is given to help manage the impact of COVID-19. But we need to do this while not neglecting the pre-existing needs. And I think that's a message that's cut through today as well. Let's not get so distracted by COVID-19 that we don't also deal with the other stuff. Since the last PBC meeting back in March, it's clear that the subsequent rise of COVID cases has been really problematic. And the UK has deployed clinical personnel to Burkina Faso to help with the management of COVID-19 patients. We've also fast-tracked about $13.5 million through our Education Cannot Wait Fund across the Sahel, but particularly in Burkina Faso. And one of the reasons we've done this is because, as we've heard today, there's a serious risk that women and girls are disproportionately affected by the challenges facing Burkina Faso. And so it's critical we do what we can to help now, but it's also critical to emphasize that women must and can be part of the solution in Burkina Faso, particularly the political solution as peace builders. And we think education is a key part of that. In the context of upcoming elections, it also seems to us that it'll be critical to keep up momentum and protect the important steps taken by the government in reaching consensus on priority peace-building activities and the intervention zones, as outlined in the really excellent matrix of priority action. So we all need to stay focused on that. It's also great to hear that SRSG Chambas is heading there for conversations soon too. But I was struck by two particular things that were also said today. One was by Oscar, which is we've got to look beyond the elections, and that's really critical. We can get quite fixated here in New York on elections and the complexity of them and making sure they're delivered in the right way. But elections open the door into new challenges and new paradigms. So let's make sure we're anticipating what's on the other side of that door. And also, I think Martha made this point really clearly. Let's continue to see Burkina Faso in terms of the challenges in the wider Sahel. In terms of questions, if the government it'd be really useful to hear both from the government of Burkina Faso and the UN a little bit more about their particular concerns about the risks to stability around the election, but also beyond, and what more the international community could do to support beyond the plans we already have in place, just to ensure those are peaceful and credible. But thank you again for the conversation today, and back to you, Bob.
Thanks very much, James. If we could hear next from Hans from Austria, and then let me just outline the next names on the list. The African Union Chief Advisor on Peace, Security and Governance, Alhaji Sergio Ba, Ireland John Devlin, Norway Bjorn Heines, and Niger Samadou Usman, and European Union Natasha Tolstoy. And then we're going to hear from notre collègue Eric Thiaré, who's the PR for Burkina Faso. So Hans, you're up.
Thank you very much. Like others before me, I would also like to thank the Prime Minister and ministers of Burkina Faso for the comprehensive briefing and the opportunity to have this timely exchange today, as others have mentioned already. We also extend our condolences regarding the 25 persons killed over the weekend. Burkina Faso is one of the focus cooperation countries of the Austrian Development Cooperation. And as a long-term cooperation partner of Burkina Faso, Austria particularly welcomes this occasion to discuss the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 on the country. The impact is serious and worrying for the population, especially for youth and women. Austria is adapting its development programs and projects accordingly, and in this context welcomes the efforts of the government of Burkina Faso and would like to encourage to continue with decentralization efforts in the implementation of anti-COVID measures. That way, remote regions could also profit from these activities. Lastly, to keep my comments short, lastly, I would like to say that we commend the continued engagement of Burkina Faso with the Peacebuilding Commission and very much welcome this exchange today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hans. Next, we hear from Alhaji Sergio Ba, who's the African Union Advisor on Peace, Security and Governance. We look forward to hearing from you, Alhaji. Are you there?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. At the outset, let me thank you for convening today's meeting on the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19 in Burkina. I would also like to acknowledge and commend the Prime Minister and his team for their detailed briefing and the practical steps taken by the government of Burkina Faso to respond to the multi-layered challenges of COVID-19. Mr. Chair, as you are aware, the Bureau of the African Union Assembly of Heads of States and Government, chaired by President Ramaphosa of South Africa, has underscored the importance of having a continental response in order to tackle the multidimensional impact of the